Hello and welcome to the Al Monitor Brief. It's Monday, June 10th. Today's main segment is a conversation with Ali Hashim on the upcoming elections in Iran. Iran's Interior Minister announced Sunday the final list of candidates for the upcoming presidential elections that was approved by the hardline Guardian Council. Ali Hashim will run us through what some of the background of these candidates are and what we should be looking out for. But first, let's get you caught up on the headlines. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was back in the Middle East on Monday to promote a Gaza truce and hostage release plan as Israeli bombardment again rocked the besieged Palestinian territory. Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz quit Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government on Sunday, heaping domestic pressure on the Israeli leader as the war in Gaza rages. Oil giant Saudi Aramco said Sunday that international investors had snatched up the bulk of shares sold in its latest offering, which was set to raise $11.2 billion. The United States has resumed aid deliveries to Gaza from a temporary pier, the country's military said Saturday, after the structure suffered storm damage and underwent repairs in a nearby port. And before we move on to the main segment, I just want to run you through the names of the candidates approved Sunday and just a line or two about who exactly they are. So to start, Mohammad Khalibaf is 62 and Iran's current parliament speaker. Saeed Jalili is a close ally of Khamenei and was among the first who registered for the elections in late May. Ali Reza Zakini is 58 and has been Tehran's mayor since 2021. Amir Hossein Hashimi, a relatively unknown public figure. He is currently serving as vice president and chairs the Foundation of Martyrs and Veteran Affairs. And the surprise, a reformist, Pezeshkian, is 69 and is currently the only reformist competing in the presidential race. He's been a member of the parliament representing the northwestern city of Tabriz since 2008. And last, Mustafa Pur Mohammadi is 64 and is the only cleric running for the presidency. He is a former Minister of Interior who held the position from 2005 to 2008 and Minister of Justice from 2013 to 2017. Now, onto the main segment. Hi, Ali. Welcome to the Al Monitor Brief.
Hi. Listen, thank you very much.
So, you have been in Iran reporting, and the Guardian Council just announced 6 candidates that have been approved and will go on to the presidential race. Can you talk us through just some of the candidates, what you've noticed, any sort of insights? We'd love to hear.
Well, in fact, when we read the names confirmed by the Guardian Council for the Iranian presidential election, there are certain names that flashes and other names that are quite underdogs in this race. For example, Saeed Jalili, the former diplomat, the very influential Paidari movement leader, also Mohammad Bakr Khalibaf, the seasoned politician, currently is the parliament speaker, and also someone who we've seen over the past years as a presidential candidate. He's always been hopeful, but he never made it to the pastoral street where the presidential complex is. Also, Masoud Pezeshkian, a seasoned and a veteran reformist politician, former minister during President Mohammad Khatami's government. And actually, it was really surprising to see a reformist politician such as Mr. Pezeshkian making it to the final list at the time when someone like Ali Larijani, who's a close advisor to the supreme leader, who's also a well-known principalist or conservative face, wasn't confirmed, just like the last election. Now, for the rest of the candidates, they are either civil servants, well known to be officials in previous administrations, or former ministers like Mr. Pur Mohammadi, Mr. Qazi Zadeh Hashimi. So these are the main candidates who we are seeing. Of course, Mr. Ali Reza Zakani, the mayor of Tehran, is also a former presidential candidate, and he's hopeful. But at the end, with respect to the candidates, these are not final candidates. What I mean here is that some of these candidates will be in the race as supporters to the other candidates. For example, Ali Reza Zakani and Qazi Zadeh Hashemi are going to be supporting, for example, Mr. Jalili. So by the end of the race, they are going to, first of all, they're going to help him during the debates, and we saw that in the previous debates when Mr. Jahangir, the former vice president, who wasn't actually confirmed for this election, was also a candidate during President Rouhani's candidacy. And at the end, he had to withdraw, giving all the support to President Rouhani. Also, Mr. Ghalibaf withdrew from the last election and the one before in favor of President Raisi, late President Raisi. So in the Iranian elections, sometimes candidates aren't really aren't in the race till the end. They are just trying to help in the race to get the main candidate to the end. With the names that we have right now, there is a possibility of a real competition, especially with Mr. Pezeshkian being the only reformist or even only moderate and reformist candidate in this election. Probably if the reformist camp is able to mobilize its supporters, its bases, there's going to be maybe a turnout. And of course, in case the turnout is above 50 or 55%, then we are either going to see a second round of the election or maybe a surprise from the first round.
Oh, okay, got it. And so do you really see this race as being between, potentially Jalili and other candidates will end up coalescing and supporting him, and then the reformists?
Well, the issue is that the principalists or the conservative camp isn't on the same page. What I'm saying here is that Mr. Ghalibaf and Mr. Jalili are real contenders, and they are actually they are rivals within the same camp. So except if the election goes to the second round, we'll be seeing Ghalibaf and Jalili competing against each other, and also at the same time competing against Mr. Pezeshkian. Now this reminds me of the 2013 elections, despite the differences with respect to the context, with respect to the political situation, with respect to many aspects. But at that time, we saw Mr. Rouhani, who was an underdog at the beginning of the election, facing 5 heavyweight principalists or conservatives, and at the end winning the election because the principalist camp was divided. And today there's a possibility that we see the principalist or the conservative camp divided in a way that could end up helping the other side, or the reformists, or Mr. Pezeshkian, in gaining more votes, especially if his own camp was able to mobilize the voters.
Okay, yeah. I guess another thing that I'm curious about is, from the Iranian public, is there any candidates who seem to have garnered a lot of support on social media or from the people? Is there any that seem to be real frontrunners, have more followers than the others?
Well, interestingly, since the name of Pezeshkian came to attention, and of course Mr. Jalili and Mr. Ghalibaf, these 3 names were really very popular on Iranian social media. And we can see that people are mentioning their names, of course, discussing their candidacy. And this is right now the talk of the town in Iran. There's no other talk right now. Who is going to be the next president? Now, for the establishment in Tehran, I think the same idea of having a high turnout is going to be a victory, or whoever wins. Now, if the reformist camp wins, then this is going to be a setback for the principalists or the conservatives, and this would mean a turning point for in the executive branch, of course. And we're not really talking about something bigger than that, because at the end, foreign policy, strategic issues are all being discussed on higher levels. The presidency is part of this discussion, is part of the decision-making process, but it's not the sole player here.
Right.
So, yeah, it's going to, but it also depends on the establishment and its approach towards international or towards foreign policy. Because we saw in 2013, for example, at the time when Iran was having secret talks with the Americans in Oman, in Muscat, we saw the moderates coming to rule, and then we saw the JCPOA. Now, after the fall of JCPOA, things changed. But now, with us hearing on several occasions that there have been U.S.-Iranian indirect talks, whether in Oman or any other place, then there might be a possibility that we're seeing maybe a new approach, especially with the war in Gaza, because I think the war in Gaza opened a lot of opportunities for both sides to talk, even indirectly, because given the fact that they both share the interest of keeping the war contained or keeping the conflict contained, that maybe established a line of connection between them, even if not direct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last question. So Jalili, who we've spoken about a lot on this, was a former nuclear negotiator. With him in the running and, gathering a lot of attention, does that mean that there would be a potential change in Iran's nuclear strategy or sort of a return to, what does that signal?
Well, I would see, sorry, just a second. Okay. Well, the candidacy of Jalili he's not the first time running for election. He's been running for presidency several occasions. And of course, he already has a kind of a clear popular base that's around 4 million voters. The possibility of him becoming the next president, just like any other one, is there. But with Khalibaf being the flag bearer of the principalists or the conservatives, it's not going to be really an easy race, an easy task. Just in case he made it, and I said this is possible, as I said, of course there are going to be changes in the Iranian approach, but it's not going to change anything in the the pillars of Iran's foreign policy. The approach will change. For the moment, this approach that's going to change isn't clear in the way the establishment is thinking, at least for now. So yeah, to me it's going to be a surprise if Jalili wins this election.
Yeah. Okay, Ali, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
That's it for today, June 10th. You can read all these stories and more impacting the region at allmonitor.com.